Well, I'm glad I got you on. This sounds okay. How do I sound on your end?
You sound great. Is Ruben going to be part of it today or no?
You asked the question that all of my interviews always ask, and Ruben is never a part of the interviews.
Why does Ruben hate interviews so much?
Well, he just hates people in general. He just doesn't. He's so big for his bridges, right? He just doesn't want to talk to anyone other than me.
None of this comes off on the show. You wouldn't know that from hearing him.
I wish he was here to defend himself. It's probably being a little bit unfair.
Well, if he doesn't show up, I guess he deserves what happens, you know?
Yeah, unfortunately, Ruben's work schedule is such that what I usually do is I book the interviews, I do all the arranging. Basically, I do everything on the show. Ruben, I always say, is my Andy Richter.
I never realized that. I didn't know that was the dynamic, you know? When you guys are together, it seems so well balanced. But now that I think of it, I haven't heard him in the interviews. So, yeah, I guess it is really your show.
He doesn't even listen to the show either. So there you go.
Oh, my God. He's not a fan of going the distance.
Well, I think he's a fan. He's just not a supporter.
Are we already starting to record? Because this is good stuff.
I'm always recording. You never know what you're going to get. So where are you right now?
Right now I'm in Los Angeles, California.
Okay. Yeah, we're both on the West Coast. I'm in Victoria, British Columbia.
I know Victoria very well. Well, just, I'm Canadian, so...
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, I guess we should get into a little bit of background here. Okay, I'll kind of start. I might as well, since we're already talking. I'll do the intro here. If there's anything you don't want to say before we start, we can just go ahead and start.
Hi, this is Michael Gelbart, and you're listening to Going the Distance, the Rocky Podcast.
Perfect. Perfect. I've never had a guest do the intro before. You're the first.
I always wanted to do it. I'm a big fan of Going the Distance, as you well know.
Yeah, I will say for our listeners, so Michael reached out to me, and this is how easy it is to get on our show. You just have to reach out to me and say, can I come on your show?
It's been harder to be on other shows than this. I will admit that.
Yeah, you think? Yeah, well, we appreciate reaching out, and it was really nice. I rarely check my email, so I got to do better at that. How did you get the email anyways? I can't remember where we advertised that.
I think I had to Google Going the Distance podcast. Is there a website for it? Or
No.
I don't remember how I got it then. Maybe it was on the Facebook page. It's somewhere.
Yeah,
I know I only tried one email and I got through. So
Good. Well, thank you. So I want to tell all of our listeners, if you too want to get through, you can... Well, there's a variety of ways to get a hold of us. Twitter, Facebook message, email. Michael, because he's the consummate professional, he got us through email because, my agent has to read all the emails first.
Oh, yeah, of course. There's a weeding out process, I would imagine. We're the only show in the history of my life that I ever contacted to be on. I've listened to about a dozen podcasts, and this was the only one where I said, you know what, I feel like being on this show.
Because our caliber was enough that you could match it, if not better it, so you felt comfortable to come on.
There were just so many things that you guys were saying that I'm like, I've said something similar to that for years, and no one else has said it. I just thought I want to be part of one of these conversations.
Awesome. Well, let's first get into who you are and what makes you special. Because you are a comedian. If our listeners haven't already figured it out, you're a funny guy, and I like funny people. And you said you're from Canada, so why don't we just go a little bit of history, as you've heard in our show. I like to get to know you, and the listeners want to know who you are. Where were you born or raised? What got you even into doing comedy as a life? What got you into Rocky?
Let's see here. I was born in Montreal, Quebec, raised there. My parents moved to Toronto when I was in my, I guess, mid-teens. I started doing stand-up at 17, right around the release of Rocky V, while I was still in high school. By around 23, I'd gotten my first special on CBC, like a half-hour special. And then I got a second one on CTV. From that, I got a lot of different offers to write on TV shows. I wrote The Geminis for 3 years, eventually becoming head writer of The Geminis. Those are now called the Canadian Screen Awards.
Okay.
That's where my writing career started, because I started getting offers to write on different shows. From those things, I applied for my green card based on my professional reputation. So I divided my time between the U.S. and Canada. I think that's a brief way of explaining all that.
That was really good. I followed everything. If I can follow it, our listeners can follow it. I'm a Montreal Canadiens fan myself. Are you a hockey fan?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the big rivalry, of course, is Toronto-Montreal. And I think that as a guy born in Montreal, my loyalty is a little more to the Canadiens than it would be the Leafs.
Well, you get to enjoy your Leafs in the playoffs right now, side note.
Okay, well, that's good, too. I mean, as long as there's a Canadian team in the playoffs, that's all that really matters, right?
Yeah, we got a few this year. For our listeners, CTV and CBC, those that aren't Canadian, those are like Canadian networks. So Michael's had a prolific... I've never had a half-hour specials. That's pretty cool. I mean, that must have felt pretty neat at the age of 23 to have that opportunity.
Yeah, you know something? It's a weird thing with entitlement and with being that young and having started something at 17, is that 23 felt old to me at the time because I'd already been at something for 6 years, and it was already a significant amount of your life. 6 years when you're 23 is a lot of years. It felt like, well, everything's happening exactly when it should, and it didn't feel all that difficult at the time. And now looking back on it, it was a hell of a young time to have one. I probably wasn't ready to get one. I feel much more grateful about the things that happened at an early age now, looking back, than I did when they were occurring.
Do you remember a joke, one of your first jokes that you told either on stage or on that special? And do you cringe when you think of any of the jokes you used to tell?
Yes. Oh, cringing for sure. The first joke I ever did on stage, and this is going back to like 1990, so you'd have to imagine what was in popular culture then. This is not a good joke that I'm going to tell right now.
Sure.
But to a 17-year-old, I said to the audience, "Hey, everybody, I just had sex with Vanna White." And then I pulled a letter E out of my pants because I said, she gave me this souvenir. That is the level of the comedy at that point in my life.
That's all right.
The joke is horrible. Like, it's a 0 out of 10 joke. It was good for an amateur comedian at 17.
It would probably be funnier now.
It would be so sad if I did that now. Here's a crazy thing I used to do when I first started, because I didn't know if I was going to be a prop comedian, an observational comedian. As you develop, you have your own style and your own take about the world, and you make decisions. But at that time, it was just like, what can I get a laugh for? You know, you're just figuring stuff out. And one of the things I did was I brought a box of Count Chocula on stage, and I said to the audience, boy, the prizes in these cereal boxes are getting really weird. And then I'd pull a giant machete out of the box, right?
Nice.
And it was about the same size of the box. It was a huge machete. Now, I was 17. I didn't have a driver's license, so I would have to take the subway home from shows holding a box of Count Chocula with a concealed knife inside it. Like, that's awesome. Ridiculous. Like, the idea that someone, you know, if a gang had ever approached me and said, "Hey, kid, give me some Chocula," I'd be able to open the box and shock them by pulling. I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, Count Chocula is a delicious cereal. I don't know what the health value of it is, but it's certainly a delicious treat.
There's no health value to Count Chocula. It is chocolate and marshmallows.
I want to talk about some of your IMDb stuff, because some of it really made me raise my eyebrow. I've always wanted to ask questions about certain things when I talk to people that have an IMDb. The one thing I keep forgetting to ask, so I'm going to ask it first, is when people get a special thanks. Now, you got a special thanks for the documentary called Heckler.
Okay. Yes, I did.
Were you aware that you got the special thanks, and what does that mean, and what were you thanked for?
Wow, I've never been asked this question in my life. I was in Toronto. I was going to headline the Yuck Yucks in Toronto from like Wednesday to Sunday or whatever the amount of days are you're supposed to headline a club. And I got a call from the owner saying, we're going to have Jamie Kennedy on the Friday. You're going to get paid the same amount of money as you would to headline, but he's in town, so we have an opportunity here. We're going to add a third show, so you'll be able to make even more money that night, and it'll be really great. So I got to know him from that. When I got back to Los Angeles, he invited me to be on his New Year's show at the Hollywood Improv, and I did various shows with him and had lunch with him and stuff. He interviewed me for the movie Heckler, where the footage did not end up getting used. He had asked me if I would help him get an interview with another comedian who was very famous he wanted for the movie, and I reached out to that person on his behalf. So I suppose the special thanks came from that relationship.
Did they tell you that it was coming, or did you just see it when the movie came out that you're credited for that?
I saw it when it came out. The other thing was, I wrote a movie called A Very Cool Christmas.
Okay, don't go there yet. Oh,
I won't. But he had asked me if I would reach out to the producers of that to help him get a theatrical release for Heckler. And I said I would reach out to them. I CC'd him on the emails. They said, we're only interested in it if we can have the DVD rights. And the DVD rights were already taken, so that didn't work out. That's where stuff like special thanks comes from. But there was a screening at a film festival, and I was invited as a guest. Jamie did a Q&A, and he said, hey, there's some really great comedians in the crowd tonight. Andrew Dice Clay is here. Tom Green is here. Michael Gelbart is here. He named me alongside comedians that are inarguably more famous. So it was nice. Yeah, that's where special thanks come from.
Awesome. All right, now to some of your as yourself appearances. You were on a show called Who Wants to Date a Comedian?
This is amazing to me because I get interviewed from time to time, but these never has anyone asked me about that show or the special thanks. So far, I'm pretty amazed because I never get to tell these stories.
Well, that's how I like to do my interviews. If you've heard a couple of my interviews, I'm trying to ask questions that they're questions I want answered. I don't care if anyone else wants them answered. This is things that when I look at people's credits and stuff, I always wonder, how did this happen? Who Wants to Date a Comedian? Were you a contestant on? Is this a dating show? Is this a comedy show, or both? Or what's the deal with this show?
I will happily, after this, send you private links to the episode. But here's what happened. Byron Allen is an entrepreneurial genius, I suppose. When I was a little kid, he was on a show called Real People. Early 80s, I guess they were a precursor to reality shows. They'd show you real Americans that do something really unique. And Byron Allen was on the show. And then years later, I ended up being a guest on a show that he owned called Comedy.TV, which I think you saw the appearance in a theater, one of those shows that's an hour long, and they have like a celebrity host, and then comedians come out and do 5 minutes or 7 minutes of stuff in the theater. And I said, we're doing a show called Who Wants to...
You broke up a little bit.
So Byron, actually someone from his company called and said, we're doing a show. We're going to start with 6 episodes to get the show sold. We want you to be one of the... We already have the stand-up footage from the night you did Comedy.TV. And the premise of the show, it's one of those dating shows, women. There's going to be like 4 women. They compete against each other in contests in which you are the judge, so you don't do anything ridiculous. You won't be in a chicken suit or anything like that. And we intercut it with the stand-up footage we already own. It's basically a half-hour showcase of you, and you eliminate the women one by one based on their ability to compete in various things. It sounded a little awkward for the women, but it sounded to me that it was just like my own half hour that I could act as host, basically. They had to perform for me, sing, or twirl, but I'd have to explain why they were eliminated.
You weren't a contestant. You were more like a host.
Pardon?
So, I was saying that you were...
Are we breaking up again?
Yeah, a little bit. It might... just wait one sec. I don't know if it's my end or your end. It's always hard to tell.
All right. Is this any better?
Well, we'll try it out for a bit. It was going really good at the beginning, but that last story broke up a couple times. What the gist of your responsibility on the show was, and we'll...
The way they pitched it to me was I'd be one of the first 6 people to have his own episode of the show. The premise is there's 4 women per week. I would choose who gets eliminated. Each round, the women would have to perform for me, either sketches or singing or baton twirling or something. They would be involved in the ridiculous part, and I would just have to explain before each commercial break or after why I was eliminating them.
Okay.
And so I agreed to do the show based on the fact that I had a novel coming out called The Other Oprahs. I said, if you make the final round when it's down to 2 women, if they can both read from my book, and then I can choose who I want to date based on who the better reader was, then I would do the show, and they agreed to that. So that's how that ended up happening.
Okay, interesting. Speaking of your book, yeah, that's right. You are a published author as well.
Yes, I am. I wrote a book I guess it came out in 2011. It was called The Other Oprahs. It's a humorous work of fiction about 4 women named Oprah who aren't Oprah Winfrey, and the relationships they have with their own name and the friendship they form. I did, I guess, bookstore signings all over the U.S. and Canada. It sold thousands of copies. It was in bookstores for a couple of years after its release, and now I've turned it into a 1-hour dramedy pilot. So hopefully I'll make the rounds with it and see if I can get some attention for that.
Well, it's a great title. That's a very... basically pirating Oprah's name in your title. Very clever. Very good.
Thanks, man.
No, I mean that in a good way. that's you know.
No, I take it in a good way, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Now let's talk about you do have one legit movie writing credit. Now, this is very interesting to me that you wrote not only a movie, it got made in 2004, and it's a Christmas movie.
Yes.
How in the world did you even think to yourself, I'm going to write a Christmas movie? Are you a fan of Christmas movies? Is it something close to your heart? Or
No, it's an interesting thing. Stallone was always an influence when it came to the fact that when you look at people who later went to write movies that they appeared in, Rocky is the launching point for so many people who made the case for getting their own movies made based on the premise that they wrote them, or do-it-yourself kind of a thing. Stallone ended up, fortunately for him, starring in the perfect vehicle for him. I think it was originally he had shown them something else, and they had passed on it, and then said, do you have any other ideas? We'll read them. And he went and wrote Rocky. Is that correct?
Yep, that's right.
And Good Will Hunting, so many examples. Now, the first time I ever tried to write a movie in my life, I went to see, it was the day Happy Gilmore came out. Tim Herlihy and Adam Sandler had written that movie. They also wrote Billy Madison. I was the exact right age to like those kind of movies. And it was right before my stand-up special aired, and I thought, where do I want to go with my career? Do I want to write? Do I want to act in things? All my life it was being pointed out to me again and again is that you had to write things and appear in them if you really wanted to have any control of your career, or even maybe have a career in a lot of cases. Mm-hmm. So I went and I wrote my first movie. Now, it made the rounds, but it did not sell. My second movie didn't sell either. But I had small parts in movies that were shot in Canada, and the producers saw my special on television. They said, we make movies for like $1.2 million. Mm-hmm. If you have any idea for a genre movie, Christmas, creature movies, something that we can sell the poster in foreign markets, let us know. Do you have anything for Christmas? So I came up with an idea for a Christmas movie. It ended up not being my Rocky or my Good Will Hunting or my Billy Madison. It's not something that was necessarily that I was incredibly passionate about from the onset. It was something I believed, based on them telling me, could get made. So I set forth to write the best Christmas movie I could write. It ended up getting made.
It's great. Let me just give the Sam Irvin here, an IMDb user, wrote the synopsis. He just said that 16-year-old Lindsay decides to give Santa Claus an extreme makeover.
Yeah, you see, that's not my Rocky right there.
Can we just say that Santa Claus is played by none other than George Hamilton?
Yeah, well, we can say that. Yes, we can definitely say it.
Now, why did you give the actress Brooke Nevin? She played Lindsay, but you gave Lindsay a last name, Lindsay Dearborn, but you didn't give anyone else a last name. What was your reasoning for that?
Oh, I didn't do that myself. Whoever submitted all of the information to the IMDb people did that. Other characters do have last names in the movie. Her whole family has the same last name as her. And my character has a last name, and then everyone has a last name.
Oh.
Whoever submitted to IMDb did not bother. I guess they got lazy and they started typing in Lindsay Dearborn, and they just said, screw it, and I'm just putting in.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
There is trivia. It was originally known as Too Cool for Christmas. Was that your title?
Yes, the original title is and should have been Too Cool for Christmas, because it's a teenage girl who thinks she's too cool for Christmas.
Right.
And through her friendship with Santa Claus and giving him the makeover, she learns the true meaning of Christmas.
Yeah, if you don't mind spoiling the movie, so what was Santa Claus's issue that she had to make him over, and what did she make him over into?
Spoiler alert, she makes him over into someone who looks like George Hamilton.
Oh, no.
No, he starts off, he's a mall Santa. He's a mall Santa. This is just reminding me that my Rocky, like my vehicle, has still not been made, you know? And more often than not in show business, the things that do end up getting made, and I'm proud that the movie exists, and it's got a home. It's got a home on Hulu, and it's been airing on Lifetime for a decade or more.
I promise you, next Christmas, I'm going to track this puppy down, and I'm watching it.
Well, it's on Hulu right now. You guys don't get Hulu in Canada,
No.
But you don't have to wait till Christmas. You could.
I have to wait till Christmas. I don't watch anything outside of the November, December area. I'm one of those.
All right, yeah. There's a lot that went right with the movie, but a lot that went wrong. It's $1.2 million budget, and they did well. Like it was a successful movie. The movie that is best to showcase me has yet to be made.
It says here that there's two versions of the film. One that features a homosexual character, and then one that doesn't.
That's another compromise that you make in show business, and I'm very happy that it got made, but here is what happened. The producers of the movie said to me, long after it sold, they said, we're going to make your movie this year, and we're going to sell it to Lifetime, and we're going to make it as is, but we started an arm of our company that's a gay and lesbian content channel called Here. What we're going to do is shoot your movie the way it was written, but all the scenes that feature a mom and dad, we're going to say cut, we're going to release the mom, put a second dad in, have him repeat the exact same dialogue. It'll only take us an additional day, or it might not even take another day, because the parents are not really leads. And that way we can cut together, without any dialogue changes, the two versions of the same movie.
That is hilarious. So you didn't write it and I'm sure you're not opposed to it, being a fellow Canadian.
I'm not opposed to it. I mean, it was made before Modern Family, so I kind of, in terms of family entertainment with gay parents, I got there first. Unintentionally, I just want anyone who wants to enjoy either version to enjoy it, so I don't care. But that was the kind of thing that was told to me in order to get the movie made would have to happen, so that's what did happen.
Oh, right. I love it. Man, that's great stuff. Better than I hoped.
Yeah, I know. It's a crazy story because that's one of those things in show business that just occurs.
Well, good for you. Number one, good for you that you've got something produced. You got a book published. You got a movie that you wrote. It's a Christmas movie, something that has a great repeat value. All I have is this Ham and Egger podcast. So, I mean...
It's not a Ham and Egger podcast. This is a great podcast. What are you talking about?
You're too kind. Then you did a lot of work in like teen and cartoon writing.
Yes, absolutely.
That must be a lot of work to do, because you got a lot of episodes you've written here for The Latest Buzz. You wrote one for Total Drama Island, which is that show still on?
I think there are versions of Total Drama. Originally, it was Total Drama Island, Total Drama World Tour, Total Drama Action. They always add a different word to the end. I wrote one episode of that. I think they're still being made.
And it says here that you did some writing for the Winnipeg Comedy Festival. Are you writing for the host, or?
No, I wrote my own stand-up on.
I see. Okay.
So they submitted me, when whoever does these IMDb things submitted me as on-air talent as well as a writer, because I wrote my 5 or 7 minutes or whatever it was.
And the last question I have, and we'll move on to some Rocky talk. What is a creative consultant? Like, what do you do as a creative consultant? Because you're credited for like 33 episodes for The Latest Buzz and another show called Spun Out.
And also Radio Free Roscoe and a bunch of other shows. Yeah, the creative consultant means when I was writing on most of those television shows, sometimes you'd write your own episodes and it would say written by in the opening credits and it would have your name right underneath. Creative consultant sounds fancy, but it's sort of story editing or punch up. You take an existing episode, you add jokes to it, you remove jokes, maybe 30 or 40 things. You delete lines that you don't think are working or add lines that you think might work.
Okay. It's
a more prestigious and it pays better to write episodes, but Writing, that's just writing. You write in a season, you write a lot of those in bulk. You write tons of those, I guess.
Okay, awesome. Well, these are the things I was interested in. I don't know if my listeners will be because some of them are really hardcore Rocky fanatics. Like, get to the Rocky already. Some,
Yeah, I got to be honest with you. When I listen to the interviews, I do want to get to the Rocky.
oh,
You asked a lot of questions no one asked, so I'm glad to answer them.
okay. Well, if it's just for me and you, that's fine by me. And I have a dedicated fan base. They'll listen regardless. So now that we got them through and we got a great history on you, tell me, Michael, what does Rocky mean to you? Are you as in love with it as I am? And what was the first one you saw? The first one in the theaters that you saw?
Correct me if I'm wrong. Rocky, that's the series of movies with Sylvester Stallone, right?
Yeah. I think he did a couple. Yeah.
All right. Well, my history was seeing them in the theaters. I think I was about 6, maybe 7 when Rocky 2 came out. And my uncle said, hey, I'm going to take you to the movies. And we went to the movies, and it ended up being Rocky 2. I was not familiar with any of this.
No.
And I'm sitting in the theater. I ended up loving the movie. And I've seen every single one of them in theaters since.
You're a couple years older than me, so you beat me by one film. My first one was Rocky 3 in the theaters.
Oh, okay. Did you end up loving Rocky from the first one you saw?
Right away.
Yeah, me too. So I ended up seeing all of them in the theaters. Till this day, I kind of I remember going to the theater to see each one and the circumstances that surrounded going. And I've probably seen every Rocky movie a minimum of 3 times, a maximum of 6 or 7.
Okay, that's
including both creeds.
We're doing, as you know, we're at season 5, Rocky 5 right now in the show.
Oh, I know. I'm more aware. I'm up to date by listening as well.
Great. Yeah, we just released a new episode of today's recording, actually. What's your feeling on Rocky 5? Are you, do you have any hot takes? Are you with the masses that despise it, or the parts that you love or hate, or what's your overall thought?
I have a lot of thoughts on Rocky 5. I've noticed that you guys have said quite often that you're very surprised about how rewatchable it is, how it's better in a lot of ways than 3 and 4, that it's more grounded or rooted in reality. You've questioned why it's been so maligned over the years. It's interesting in popular culture why something becomes disliked often by people who never see it. They just automatically know. I have this friend who used to make fun of 2.5 Men. And I wasn't a fan of 2.5 Men, nor was I someone who hated it. But I said, have you ever watched the show? And he confessed that he had never seen it. But it was just something the cool kids had said so often to him that he automatically associated with being something bad. Right?
Right.
And even as kids, there's a kid in the playground, everyone decides she's poison or contaminated or anything. And it's just another regular human being, but we attach these negative ideas to it. And if they take hold, something becomes way worse than it actually is. There's a number of reasons I think this happened with Rocky 5. I remember going to see it opening weekend, and I was such a fan of the series that I couldn't imagine a world where it wasn't going to be the number 1 movie of the weekend. I knew that this little movie about a kid who gets left home by himself while his parents accidentally went on a trip without him was opening that same weekend, but there was no way that that movie could beat Rocky. You have to think back at 1990. There's this little family movie coming out called Home Alone. Rocky 5 is winning that weekend.
Oh yeah, I was 15 when it came on. I was with you opening weekend.
Yeah. So and I was 17, and I'm sitting there and I watched the movie opening weekend, packed theater. People cheered. People applauded when Rocky beat Tommy Gunn at the end. There was applause. I remember applause for each punch right before he knocks him out in the big fight.
Oh, wow.
The theater was very into it. Now, if you look it up, there's also an audience polling site called CinemaScore that polls audiences opening weekend of every movie that comes out. And Rocky 5 got an A-. That means the people that saw it that weekend liked it as much as many of the other Rockies up until that point. So on that one weekend, the fans went home happy. But what happened since then? I remember watching Entertainment Tonight on Monday morning, shocked when they announced that some movie called Home Alone completely dominated at the box office. Now, when you think about it in retrospect, we now associate Home Alone with being a huge, huge movie. Right. So It would make sense to anyone today that would happen, but it was quite shocking then.
Oh,
So
yeah.
number one thing that happens is Rocky V disappoints at the box office.
Okay. Yeah.
And from that, so the MGM and everyone associated the movie associates it with the time they failed.
Right.
And that just builds on itself. Then I also, and this is kind of a dark thought, but as the years went by and Sage Stallone passes away, Stallone himself probably looks back at that movie and it's almost having to look at the son that you lost for 2 hours.
Yeah.
And that's got to be painful. And you wouldn't associate that with a positive time in your life. You'd associate with a time not only with the one character that never let you down, did let you down, box office wise, and it almost could malign it could derail your career in a number of ways. It took 16 years for him to be able to make another one because of it. It was ridiculously hard to get another one made. People mocked the idea that there was going to be another one, all because of what that movie did. There's so many reasons why Stallone would have such negative associations, both personally and professionally, for the movie. There's a lot of great things in the movie, but there's a lot of things in it that I think are huge flaws as well.
Of course, yeah.
But it was a risky movie to make because it deviates from the formula in so many ways that they should be applauded just for taking that chance.
And that's what a lot of people do say, is that it is a different film, that we didn't have like Rocky in space for the Rocky V. It became grounded, like Rocky fighting an alien in the ring. That's where Rocky V would have gone had they continued their how do we top a Drago character?
Yes, exactly. So there's no one. Yeah, the only choice was to reground Rocky, the Rocky universe, and bring it back to what I guess they thought were the glory days, which were 1 and 2, because 3 and 4 are inarguably huge movies and people love them.
Oh yeah.
But at the same time, they completely deviate from who we knew. The aesthetic is different. They become action movies, almost cartoonish.
Yeah.
They're still a lot of fun.
Well, yeah, they are fun, and it's a great way to introduce a younger audience to the Rocky character. Like, we were kids when we kind of saw that Rocky 3 and 4, we were young, and because I was 15 when Rocky 5 came out, so I remember watching Rocky 5, and you've heard me talk about it. My only complaint when I first saw it in the theaters, my theater was a much different experience than yours. Mine was quite empty, so maybe I didn't see it opening weekend. I thought I would have, because that's just the way I am, but it might have been like a matinee showing or something. I was like waiting and hoping that I was not misled by the trailer, that he was going to fight in the ring.
Yeah, I knew he wouldn't fight in the ring. I did know it was going to be a street fight. I was not happy about that.
And that was hard for me as a 15-year-old boy to accept the fact that Rocky didn't settle this, I would say the proper way, but like even if they had a little bit of a scuffle in the street, a bit of back and forth, and maybe even a couple shots at each other, and then George breaks it up, and Adrian breaks it up, and after maybe Adrian was there, let's say when Paulie got hit, and she sees Paulie get hit, and she kind of wants a change of heart about Rocky, taking care of this guy in the ring. I think it wouldn't be as maligned today. That's my opinion. That had this somehow ended in the ring, and then Rocky, how I see it, just makes mince meat of Tommy like 2 rounds.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been much of a contest.
No. And maybe that's their argument for not having the ring, because I think, and that's kind of fair. I get it, that going through all this trouble, making it in the ring and promoting it, Rocky's going to handle this guy very easily. He's got that, at that age and stage in Rocky's life, he's still very strong, very buff, very tough, and there's just no way this 20-year-old kid's going to damage Rocky.
Yes, absolutely. The part about the ring wasn't what bothered me when I first saw it, and there are still things that bother me to this day that I'll never be able to, as an audience member, go with them on the overall movie because I didn't buy a couple of things from the setup of the film.
Okay, what's give me an example.
Okay, you guys had talked about the age jump that Robert should have taken, like that there should have been a 5-year gap. And I've always said that. You don't have him show up at the airplane hangar for the press conference.
Right.
So there was always the fact that he ages that much. And there was also the fact that if you're that famous and you've just had the biggest fight of your life, you're an international success. He went broke too quickly, and there were too many ways for someone that famous to stay at least upper middle class. And this is the problem with a number of movies, is just because you want to get your character somewhere, it doesn't mean that you can just get them there without, you have to provide a reasonable way that's rooted in human behavior to get them there. Otherwise, it's going to be hard for the audience to go with you. So they've asked us to believe that Rocky, with that level of fame after fighting Drago, would be like, well, I can't box anymore, so I guess I got to go live in the same exact house from the first movie.
Right.
Like, here's what I would do to help the Robert situation and the money situation at the same time.
Okay.
Gets off the plane. Hey, where's Robert? Oh, he's off at his fancy private school. Oh, I wish I'd been at a school like that when I was a kid. I'm so glad I'm able to provide a good education for my whatever, right. Those kind of lines. Then we find out that they lost power of attorney, lost the money, and Rocky says, okay, I will do anything to keep our family afloat. I'll do autograph signings. I'll do waterbed commercials, ribbon cuttings, whatever we have to do since I can't fight. I'll do whatever it takes. Don't tell Robert because he doesn't need to know. I want to keep him in his fancy private school till he graduates. Mm-hmm. Then we cut to 5 years later. He comes home when they're having the auction. So Rocky has managed to keep the family afloat through diminishing returns on his own fame that we don't need to see. But at least it makes sense that it takes 5 years to lose that level of fame, for it to matter less. It would explain the aging, and it would also create even more drama between father and son. You didn't tell me about any of this. You kept me out of it. He spent 5 more years in a fancy school with fancy people, so the contrast of now having to start in a tough school would be even greater.
Yeah, that would have worked.
There are so many lines of dialogue like, hey, Rocky, do some commercials. I ain't no commercial kind of guy. Plus, with your history of loan sharking, when it comes out in the court case against the real estate guy, right, you'll never be able to get any commercials. Okay, well, then I just won't sue the guy. That'll never come out, and I'll make those commercials. Right. Like, there's so many outs in the existing movie that don't involve being in the ring.
Even if you just set up, do you want to be trained by an ex-champion?
Yeah, there's 7 million ways to not go move back to that house. Yeah. And he takes none of them because the movie wants us to get them to that house as quickly as possible.
Yeah, that's a good point. I like it. We wouldn't have had the milk money being stolen from Robert's scenes, though.
No, we still would have gotten those because now Robert has gone from 5 years being in a private school to a terrible school. It would be a greater contrast because now we'd be meeting Sage Stallone playing him for the first time as someone who was even more fish out of water. He had been affluent for longer in his own mind, at least.
So it would have eventually caught up to them. They would have had to make the change of scenery.
They would have ended up where they ended up. It just would have been a 5-year jump where right before that jump, he says, I'm going to do all of those things that we all would do to maintain.
Right.
And but after 5 years, he just couldn't hang on any longer.
No, it's good. I like it. I've never had anyone theorize or talk about the beginning part other than the time jump, like how to fix that. I always said just to fix it with same thing. Don't have the boy show up at the airport and just have 5 years later. But you're giving the storyline for those 5 years later, and I like it. Like a logical. It took time for them to end up here.
Yeah, it took time, and it would also make Robert even more frightened at the new school, and it would be like a complete contrast to his existing life. And it takes care of a lot of things all at once, and it only involves 1 day of fixing the script.
Yeah, it's weird because this is not a slight on Sly, and the question I would have for him is, we know he can write. He wrote all the Rockies minus Creed Part 1. So we know that he has a very talent, especially when it comes to the Rocky character. It's just in him. He just knows how to channel this story. But I wonder why there wasn't anyone, like, movies have been around for a while. I'm always curious why they didn't have someone say to him, like, hey, Stallone, Mr. Stallone, I know you want your son in this film. That's really cool. And that's his right. You know, he already gave us 4 films. He can do whatever he wants. So he wants to have his son star with him as his son in the screen, by all means. I'm surprised nobody just said, like, can we just do a time jump? Can we just do a 5 years later card? I don't know why.
Yeah, I think that at that particular time, If you look at Stallone's body of work, there was Tango and Cash and Lockout. And I think it was that period of time where you're lining them up in a row. I'm going from this set to this set, and I wrote the Rocky movie, and it was just a very, very busy time.
Right.
If he's going to think, okay, this script is ready, and we're shooting on this date, and we already have our release date ready, and it's just kind of lining them up one after the other kind of attitude, then I guess everyone sort of agreed that, yeah, this works, and that'll be fine, and let's just move along. Yeah. But he didn't put that level of care. Now, when you look at something like Rocky Balboa, here he had 16 years or 15 years from when that movie wrapped to when this movie got produced to basically go, if I got one more chance with this character, I know exactly what I would do. And when you have that level of time, and when your movie career is not in the place it once was, where you're every 3 months you're on a different set, that's why there was so much care put into it, because it's like, this is my chance to really say farewell to the character that launched my career. Actually ends up reviving his career completely as well, because the only theatrical release he had at that time was the villain in a Spy Kids movie. Everything else was going direct to DVD. Making a great Rocky movie was both a way of ending the character beautifully as well as relaunching himself. Every I was dotted and every T was crossed by that point.
You know, it's interesting. Ironically, the failure, so to speak, of Rocky V, I think if it had been successful, both critically and commercially, I wonder if we ever would have had Rocky Balboa. Because I think his intention truly was, with that Rocky V, was to end the character. I don't think there was any indication with the way the film ended that he had any intention of doing a part 6. I think if you were to go back in time and ask him straight up, is this the last Rocky film? He would have been, oh yes, this is it.
Oh yeah, absolutely, because he intended for the character to die at the end, as you know.
That's right. So yeah, so there you go. He wanted him to die anyway. So this was definitely the last film. The Measure of the Man song, you know, doing the little tie-up with the son at the end there. Everything's good, and he's just going to live his life as a retired family man.
Yeah, the Measure of the Man song feels like a eulogy song.
Right.
Then the movie doesn't give us his death, which I'm really glad it didn't. According to John Avildsen, I knew, they got a phone call during the shooting, and they said, Rocky's not going to die. We've changed our minds. We can't have Rocky die in this movie. Avildsen said, without that, the movie kind of felt pointless, that they've taken the point of this movie away. I don't agree. I think that you can still make that movie with Rocky living, and there's still a lot of value to it.
It's interesting that Rocky V being the failure that it was, we get Rocky Balboa, and then we get Creed 1 and 2. And I wonder if Creed would have ever been made had Rocky Balboa never been made, had Rocky V been the success that it was. It could have been.
I know he never intended for Rocky Balboa to be any kind of bridge to more movies.
No.
And I'm pretty sure that when they were trying to convince him, he was like, I already found a way to end the character perfectly. He was probably very concerned that he'd screw up, or someone would screw up the way he ended it, because he managed to take something that had become ridiculed and give it its respectability back. If you remember, in around December of 2006, when the movie came out, I was confident that late night talk show hosts were going to rag on it, and that it was going to be a joke, and people were hoping that it would, so they could make fun of it. And then it ended up getting 76% on Rotten Tomatoes, which, if there hadn't been all that desire to ridicule it, I think that would have been closer to 85 or 90.
Sure.
People were disappointed. Some people were actually disappointed they weren't able to make fun of it.
Right.
Could only give it up for that movie to a certain degree because it was begrudging. That was a begrudging 76%. If there had been no Rocky, imagine Stallone made Rocky, went into seclusion, and then came back and made Rocky Balboa 30 years later.
Right.
And it ends up being the same exact movie. There might be a line change here or there to accommodate the fact that there wasn't that history in between.
Right.
It would be a much more beloved movie because there wasn't any kind of pop culture ridicule along the way.
Yeah, and I think exactly right. I think you are speaking to what Stallone had in mind when he wrote that film was, and I think he said in an interview somewhere or something that you could almost just have Rocky and Rocky Balboa as your two films. I think that was his intent, to almost not have the other films happen when he wrote that film. I think that was kind of what he was doing. It was not only just a bookend, but almost like a direct sequel, a 30-year sequel to Rocky 1.
Yeah, and one thing I always wanted to do, if I ever have a son, is I'd like to show them Rocky and then Rocky Balboa right afterwards and kind of blow their mind because they just watched a young man and then watched him turn into an old man.
That'd be an interesting experiment to do with somebody.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. But yeah, I want to get back to the other problem I have with Rocky V. The thing that was both a risk on their parts in deviating from formula, but also didn't quite work, which is George Washington Duke's plan from the beginning. Here, so we have two characters. Rocky wanted to stay successful, but refused to do anything but box. It's like, well, I can't box. Guess I have to be poor now. Yeah. And then George Washington Duke, who allegedly loves money, right? He's motivated by money. He's in it for the money. He just wants the money, Tommy. Everything about George Washington Duke is about money, but he refuses to make money unless it's in a boxing ring. He could easily have said to Rocky, well, I signed a deal with Caesar's Palace. You can greet fans that walk in. I just want that money, right? But no, he's got to get Rocky in a boxing ring that he can't be in. Otherwise, there's no money, right?
Yeah, that's that interesting point there. Yeah, so that's kind of it's called, well, as you know, it's a plot device. This to have this guy, the only way to make money is for a one-time fight. You're right, maybe it wouldn't be the big jackpot that the fight would have been, but it's still a Caesar's Palace entry, spar with a champ, ex-champ, there's a lot of ways.
There's ways to do it, and George Washington Duke would have been down for any of them. He's not above ripping you off in any capacity. He doesn't have to just rip you off in the boxing ring.
Right.
He'd be happy to do it in any way, but no, got to be boxing or nothing. So George Washington Duke has a plan. Now, first he approaches Rocky about fighting Union Kane. Rocky can't fight Union Kane. I've seen the boxing records. We can, I've seen your medical report. We can work around it, et cetera, et cetera. Adrian won't let him. Rocky starts to train Tommy. George Washington Duke sees that it's working well. He's making him into a successful boxer, and his new plan is to take Tommy away from Rocky. It has to work. Tommy can't say no, and then pit them against each other, and then get Rocky in a boxing ring that he's already refused to be in. So many things have to go his way for his scheme to work in ways that are impossible unless he's already read the rest of the movie script. There's no real reason he would know that these things would all work the way he wanted. In order to get someone who refuses to box someone else in a boxing ring, his plan involves waiting for 14 other things to happen in order for him to fulfill a plan that didn't work when he asked him to fight Union Kane. So he still wouldn't be able to get him in a boxing ring.
Right.
And also, we find out Union Kane's got a glass jaw. They say it at the press conference. Right. Why not say to Rocky when you first approach him about fighting Union Kane, look, Rocky, I've seen your medical records. They're terrible. Trust me, one punch, this guy's down. We each get millions of dollars. No, I'm going to wait until you train someone, hope that he becomes good enough, hope I can steal them away, hope he wins the championship, for that information to come out.
Yeah.
And then hope you get into a boxing ring that you were never willing to get into.
Yeah, Rocky could have even told Adrian, look, I'll take the fall after one round. We'll still get paid.
The scheme doesn't work.
Right.
And so I had trouble with the scheme not working and the fact that the only way any of these characters will make money, which seems to be the motivation of many of the characters, is through a boxing ring that one of the characters can't be in. So that's what I struggle with. And I still enjoy it overall.
And we have to go through that journey to get the Rocky Balboa and to get the Creed films. I think the Creed films were very well done. And I think they surpassed everyone's expectations. Do we need or do we want or are we going to get a Creed 3?
We will probably get one because the movie made more than 4 times its budget. It actually... it cost $25 million and made like $230 globally. Michael B. Jordan has a hole in his schedule, or a couple of movies don't do so well. It would be hard for them not to make another movie. But here's why I think it would be really difficult and why we don't necessarily need one. It incorporates so many elements of Rocky 2, 3, and 4 in that one movie. 4 is obvious because it's Drago and his son. Mrs. Drago's in it. It's dealing with so many things from 4. Mm-hmm. It also deals with a lot of things from 3. The champion loses to a degree. I know he doesn't technically lose, but he loses his confidence. He gets beaten severely and has to come back, is completely the Rocky III storyline. Mm-hmm. And also their proposal and having a child is Rocky II. So it incorporates 3 movies all in the same movie. So it leaves all our characters in a great place, that if this is the last we ever see of these characters, we've left them all in a pretty beautiful place. So tampering with that would be incredibly tough to do. Right. And I don't know how they would do it.
Yeah, that's the challenge. I mean, because I think in a weird way they hem themselves or paint themselves into a corner, because I think maybe even they weren't sure, how long is Stallone going to be on the earth for? Let's just be honest, he's not young anymore. He's 72, and anything can happen when you're in your 70s. Number 2, we don't know how well this film's going to do, both commercially and with critics. And so I think they wrote a film in a weird way, like, just in case this poops the bed, let's tie it up with a bow at the end.
Yeah, and I like Creed 1 more than I like Creed 2, but I really like Creed 2 a lot. I saw it 3 times in theaters, nice. So I'm a fan of it. But at the same time, I did think to myself, you made it to the finish line really well here, just barely, because it wasn't quite as good as Creed 1. Did you see the deleted scenes yet of Creed 2?
I haven't yet. I've seen a couple like snippets, but I don't want to ruin it. I haven't bought it yet, but I'm going to be buying it on my 4K DVD player.
Someone put them on YouTube. They put 9 minutes of deleted scenes, and they would have been great for the movie. But I think they left everyone in a really good place by the skin of their teeth. I think we're looking at diminishing returns if they tried again, because of how many things they managed to fit in that movie.
Right. Well, we'll have to wait and see. I don't know. I'm nervous. I was nervous about Creed 1 and it did well, and I was nervous about Creed 2 and it did good. So I don't know. Maybe we should have some faith in Stallone and in the gang.
I was not nervous about Rocky Balboa. I was not nervous about Creed. And I was a little nervous about Creed 2. I was very impressed when Rocky talked in Creed about events in a cartoonish movie, but he talked about them in a way that was rooted in reality.
Yeah.
So I was like, that's an impressive feat, to take something that was kind of ridiculous. And they never said Drago by name or anything, because they're like, let's use the feelings that we need without going to talking about robots or talking about anything ridiculous from that movie. It's use those feelings about someone dying in the ring and your regrets. Use the emotion, but not the actual names. So I thought, oh my God, they're not just using the emotions this time. They're going with the names. So they're going to have to root those characters in this reality, and they successfully did that too.
Yeah, got to give full credit to Sly there for writing a really true sequel to actually 2 movies. That's pretty clever. He wrote a sequel to 2 movies.
It was a really great feat to pull off. I would end there. He's announced he's ending there. Everyone has made announcements in the past that they've taken back, so I wouldn't be surprised if he was back in another one. I would like them to end it right where it is.
I don't know if you heard this in one of my previous episodes. If they were going to do a Creed 3, they should have either Rocky just totally off, not in the movie at all, talked about maybe, and or he's passed on. So it really is just truly a Creed story, and make it just a trilogy. And have it so, I don't know how he gets there, but have it that Creed actually does lose at the end. But the same way that Rocky started, the Creed franchise would end with him losing in the ring, so to speak, but he still has his family, and that's all that matters. And it's kind of a warrior's end without having to be the Hollywood ending.
Yeah, that would be a really good ending. Yeah, I just hope that if they do something like that, that they maintain the dignity of what they've done.
That's
right.
Yeah,
that sounds like a good idea to me. I want to address one more thing if you have time. I don't want to make you over-edit.
Well, yeah, this is gonna be a beast edit, which is fine. Don't get me wrong. That's just me because I'm a OCD when it comes to editing. This is an awesome discussion.
It's amazing to me what Rocky V. Another thing Rocky V did was change the future in future Rocky movies, and it's also a testament to the time. Rocky V is largely about money. One character wanting money, losing all your money. The element of money comes up a shocking amount of times.
Right.
In Rocky Balboa, he never mentions getting paid for the fight. We know he must get paid for the fight, but they leave it out of the story because the audience will start thinking, well, the character did it for the money. Does Rocky care about money? He wants a new car. Like, it takes your mind to different places. And because they wanted it to be, this is about cleaning out the basement. This is about undoing anything in your, this is about things that are left undone in your life. They wanted to keep those themes going, showing that you still can stand toe to toe, all of that stuff. And if you start bringing up, hey, how much am I getting for this thing? You lose that. So money never comes up.
That's great.
And then in the future Rocky movie, like in both Creed movies, money is never addressed again. They used money up so much in Rocky V, and it became such a negative that the idea that you would even bring up money, and all the other movies, Rocky II, here's a man who's like, I want nice things for the family. I think we need them now. The money comes up in that movie. Rocky III, Apollo says, I like working with large numbers. Money comes up. There's nothing wrong with wanting money for being great at something in those movies. But after Rocky V, the idea of getting paid, it becomes almost an ugly subject that would maybe take the audience away from your point.
That's great. That's a great observation.
Yeah, the one thing that never comes up in a Rocky, even Adonis, when he wins the fight and he gets back his Mustang, he doesn't start driving like 10 nice cars or anything like that. He wants the Stang back because it's the one thing he was left from his dad. So they keep everything, even material possessions. They try and make sure that the audience knows that there's a heart behind the material possessions and not just, hey, I got a talking robot now. So they took all of that out.
That's good. That's a really astute observation. I don't think I ever would have brought that up in future episodes. I'm not sure. I don't think I would have made that connection, that money is a non-facto discussion point anyways.
Yeah, and it might be symptomatic of just how money-based Five was and how they equate that with its failure.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, Michael, it's been a absolute joy and pleasure having you on the show. Truly, I mean, I was talking Rocky with you. You're more than capable of being a guest host on the show and coming on again. I would love to have you back on again.
I want to come back. Yes.
Okay, yeah.
That would be the greatest.
I mean, there's times where I need to do it. Look, I'm going to be honest with you. There's times where I need to do recording, and Ruben and our schedules don't always line up, and I got to get an episode out there. So if I can call you in a pinch or set something up, I'd love to have you on again. You're funny, and you're certainly insightful when it comes to how movies are made and plot devices and things like that. And it exposes me a little bit, but I like it. I like learning from other people. That's why I like having people on, because it's variety is the spice of life, I think.
All right, great. Well, then I'll be back on the show.
So is there anything you want to plug or anything you want to mention before you head out?
Played pretty regularly on Sirius XM on Raw Dog or Canada Laughs. So you can, catch some of my stand-up on there. And I have a new special that was just edited, but it's not ready for sale. So hopefully that'll be make the round soon, and I'll let you guys know when it's available.
Please.
And I guess people can add me on Instagram at Real Gelbart or Michael Gelbart on Facebook or something like that.
Oh, okay. I'll be sure to do that myself. I haven't done that yet, so I'll do that.
Okay, keep punching. I'll talk to you again. This was a pleasure.
Do you want to take us out?
Folks, you've been listening to Going the Distance, the Rocky podcast, the only Rocky podcast to update on a regular basis, and it's the greatest.
Thanks, man. Ding,
All
ding.
Right. All right. See you later.